Growing up, I always heard stories about the crazy things my dad did as a teenager. But there was one story in particular that always stood out. One time, my dad had attempted to make a hot air balloon. Now it almost goes without saying that things did not turn out very well. Let me break it down for you. My dad made the balloon out of garbage bags duct taped together. And the source of flame was an open bowl of gasoline. In an attempt to avoid injury, my dad had created a trail of gasoline so he could light it from a safe distance, like in the movies. But when my dad lit the trail, it didn't go in the direction he'd hoped. It went straight towards the gas can. All of my dad's friends booked out of there. They didn't want to die that day. But my dad knew if he blew up his mother's backyard, he would suffer an even worse death. So he stayed and tried to put out the flame. Luckily he did, or else I might not be here today. So where did he go wrong? The duct tape and gasoline? Maybe it was trying to make a hot air balloon in the first place. Flight is not an easy thing to achieve on your own, but recently the mentality of creating something on your own has skyrocketed. This is known as DIY, or do-it-yourself, and it's even earned its own social media platform, Pinterest. According to DIY by the numbers, in the US alone, there are 135 million adult makers, 57% of the adult population. And DIY pumps roughly $29 billion into the US economy annually. It's been dubbed the next industrial revolution. Maker fairs and maker spaces are popping up all over the country. The White House held its inaugural Maker Faire in 2014, declaring that, quote, today's DIY is tomorrow's made in America. So today, let's look at the ABCs of DIY. A, about DIY, what it is and how to do it. B, the benefits of DIY, what you can gain from it. And C, the cautions of DIY, when you should avoid it. I hope by sharing these three aspects of DIY, I can encourage you to join in on this exciting phenomenon. So first, A, about DIY. According to Wikipedia, DIY is a process of making, modifying, or repairing something without the direct aid of professionals. To illustrate the range of DIY projects, let's look at your typical American home. My home, which some would say is not that typical. First, let's consider my dad. He buys, renovates, and sells houses for a living. And in order to maximize profit on each property, he's taught himself a lot of the skills necessary to do a good job. Things like plumbing, electrical work, and laying tile. My mother has taken up another type of DIY just in the past year, knitting. She started out knitting just a simple wash rag, but has since moved on to knit hats, booties, gloves, and she's currently knitting a poncho for my sister. Whenever she gets stuck, she just pulls up a tutorial on YouTube. Cooking is another type of DIY that most of us do every single day. My sister Rebecca enjoys taking on baking challenges in her free time. Things like specialty cakes, crepes, or biscotti. And many of these recipes she finds on Pinterest. My oldest brother Nathan isn't exactly who you think of when you think of the creative type. But just 2 years ago, he took it upon himself to build his own computer using an online tutorial. And my other brother Caleb is quite creative. He's developed a love for carpentry. He's built his own desk, shelves, couch, cornhole set, and makes and sells wooden rings. As for me, I enjoy taking on various art projects in my free time, such as many of the projects I used in creating my illustrated oratory boards. So as you can see, there's a large range of what qualifies as a DIY project. So there's probably something out there for you. But now there's the question of why should you participate in these projects? And this leads me to my second point, point B, the benefits of DIY. DIY results in a feeling of pride and accomplishment, which increases confidence. Having the courage to fail is distinctive of many DIYers, and it's a refreshing trait in our perfectionist society. You should never let the fear of failure stop you from trying something in the first place. But DIY also results in a feeling of understanding and appreciation. Understanding just how hard it is to do something, the time it takes, and the cost. When you're an active participant in making things, you pay attention to small details in other people's products that show good craftsmanship. Another cool thing that DIY does is increase brain power. According to Scientific American, there are 5 ways to increase fluid intelligence. which is defined as, quote, the ability to observe new information, retain it, and then use that new knowledge as a foundation to solve the next problem. These 5 things are novelty, challenge, creative thinking, doing things the hard way, and networking with others for help. DIY encompasses all of these. It's like cross-training for the brain, and what doesn't kill you makes you smarter. But a culture of DIYers don't just benefit themselves, but the entire community. The Greek philosopher Plato once said, quote, necessity is the mother of invention. And we see a great example of this in the island nation of Cuba. According to PBS, because they were cut off from trade for many years, they had to make do with the resources they had, making fans out of boat propellers and washing machine motors, and satellite dishes out of garbage can lids. They became a nation of amateur engineers, inventors, and welders. We don't have the same necessity in our country, but a desire to conserve natural resources and help the environment has led to a surge in upcycling and recycling. The DIY movement is full of ideas for turning cast-off materials into useful inventions or even art. One of the best benefits of DIY is, of course, saving money. According to HouseLogic.com, when you remove professionals from the home improvement equation, you can cut your costs in half. But you also get many intangible returns on your investment. Whenever you make something yourself, you tend to enjoy it more. This is called the IKEA effect. Z. Frank, president of BuzzFeed, says, quote, having someone do certain things for you is like getting somebody to chew your food for you. It might make it easier to swallow, but it loses all its flavor. So as we can see, there are many benefits to participating in DIY. But there's some things that we should probably avoid. This leads me to my third and final point. Point C, the cautions of DIY. Building a hot air balloon is just one example of something that might be too dangerous for you to achieve on your own. If something's dangerous, you should probably leave it to the professionals. Don't overestimate your own capabilities. You should always try new things, but understand the possible consequences before you attempt them. Other examples of dangerous DIY include homemade braces made from rubber bands, which according to Fox News result in permanent loss of teeth, and a homemade flamethrower made from a hairspray can and a lighter. Simply put, hairspray can plus lighter equals one less eyebrow. So we get it. There's things we probably shouldn't do, and things we don't have the experience to do. But how do we apply this lesson to our lives outside of DIY? It's actually a great illustration for how we should live our lives spiritually. Think of it in very simple terms. You can't DIY your way to heaven. Imagine your soul as a pure white cloth, and in order to get to heaven when you die, your cloth has to be intact. But here's where the problem starts. From the moment you were born, your cloth was ripped. Every time that you sin, you do more damage. You tell a lie. You criticize the appearance of someone else God created. You skip church this Sunday for no other reason than you're just too tired. You keep doing more and more damage, and nothing you could ever do will restore your cloth to what it once was. It's no longer good for anything but to be thrown away. With this cloth, you could never enter the gates of heaven. But God offers you mercy. He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to die a horrible death to cleanse you of your sins. His Son lived 30 years and never once damaged His own cloth. He didn't have to die for you, but He did because He loves you. And He wants to give you a clean start. All you have to do to get that is trust Him, love Him, and live your lives to glorify Him. Once you do, your old soul is disregarded. You're born again. You're given a new soul and a new pure white cloth. And this time, nothing the devil himself could ever do will be able to damage your cloth again. So in conclusion, God Himself was a maker. And He wants us to experience the same joy and pride that He felt when He created us. We've been given a great opportunity to feel that through DIY. Regardless of who you are or the things that you enjoy, there are many benefits for participating in DIY projects. And there's probably some out there for you. But the best benefit that all of us get from DIY is learning and knowing in our hearts that we don't have to do it on our own. Thank you.